Hello, everyone. Welcome to another round of Alicia Reviews Books. This week, I am super excited to talk about Unlearning Shame by Devon Price. I don't have the physical copy of the book. I did an e-reader. I did a lot of spending on CEUs and trainings and conferences last month. So once my budget allows it, I'm gonna buy that book because I'm giving it 5 stars. I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but I wanted to justify why I don't have the physical book here because it's so good. All right. So before I get ahead of myself, I'm Alicia Johnson. I'm a licensed therapist and I love to read. I read for fun. In fact, I'm sporting a broccoli shirt today. If you know, you know. And there's so many mental health books out there, which I love for the awareness and being able to get some accessible information and tools. That also means there can be a lot of crap out there, and I'm here to help you figure out which books are worth your time and which ones aren't. I can't make that decision for you. I'm going to share just some overall summaries, what I liked, what I didn't like, who I suggested for, and then you can let me know if you think it's a good fit for you. So, if you are new to this one, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. My cat did just wake up from a nap, and so he may join. He's currently laying on my purse right now. We'll see if we can get through this a little bit without him being a punk. Maybe not. If this is not your first time and you've actually seen one of mine with this other author, buckle up because, oh, I've got some thoughts. So, I've been doing a few of these now, and a couple months ago, I read a really popular book by Devon Price, who's the same author of Unlearning Shame, and it was called Unmasking Autism. And it was a super popular book in the therapy community. It's in all of like the book recommendations, and I didn't love the book. I gave it a 3 stars. I think I was being kind of generous, but I gave it a 3 stars. This one is a couple years newer. I had to look it up because I was like, I love this book. What's different than this book than the last book? Time. People learn, people grow. Love that for them. So this one, Unlearning Shame, I give 5 out of 5 stars. Honestly, I would do more because instantly hooked and I've already recommended it to so many clients. Why did I read this book after I read another book from them that I didn't love? Well, I'm part of a therapist book club, and this person, we like alternate who gets to pick the book. And the book club person picked this book, and so I kind of had to read it. And I was so, so glad I did because I was so pleasantly surprised. So, a little background, I read The Unmasking Autism, and one of my big complaints with that book was it wasn't very systemic in viewing things, which was really surprising because the person was, I guess, social worker, like literally like you would think they'd be really like looking at the bigger picture. And I didn't get that from the book. This book is so darn systemic, and if that's a new term for you, stick around because I'm going to talk so much more about what the heck that means, but just chef's kiss. Okay, so Unlearning Shame is overall about shame. Shocker. It starts with describing this term called systemic shame, already loving the systemic layers. So basically, systemic shame is looking at shame with the multiple layers that we are embedded in. So it looks at the history of things, the culture of things, our family patterns, so many different like puzzle pieces, which is really what a systemic therapist like myself does every day with clients. And so it really looked at the nuances and the complexities of shame. Oh my God, it was so good. So it also does a great job of deconstructing what shame is and taking the responsibility and pressure off of the individual person because we're looking at the larger context that we're in. And so I really liked that, it can help us kind of like hold accountability and like reflect on things without taking everything on. Because I know myself and a lot of the clients I work with, we just take it all on. We feel guilty, we feel exhausted, we feel like we're not doing enough, and all that can lead to shame when in reality it's maybe not all on us and we've kind of been like programmed to take it all on. And so it's super fascinating being able to see just how much larger than even I thought shame was. Um, it like kind of like a side note, it's not like a huge spoiler, but it talked about some of the history of shame and kind of like forcing folks to be a little bit more taking it on and putting the responsibility on the individual person. I think oh, my cat just jumped on the desk. We will see. Um, I think we see it a lot in language around like gun laws and even like cigarette laws back in the day. But I was fascinated that they shared an example about how jaywalking was really a big start in putting individual responsibility on larger issues. So I don't even like history, and I was enthralled by this. I like read that chapter. I went up to my husband and I was like, babe, get this. Did you know? And I was so jazzed. I was like, did you know the history of transportation industry and the automobile industry and all this stuff? And he's just like, okay, Alicia. But I was telling everyone I knew about how jaywalking was really forced to make the individuals responsible for these larger issues. My mind was blown. I'm not trying to share too much 'cause I want you to be able to read it and like not give it was such a revolutionary way of thinking. I want you to be able to have that too. But it talked about all sorts of different areas like religion and politics, our food industry, our environment, consumerism, even things like rest, which you know your girl's a big fan of. I'm watching my cat. He's thinking about being naughty. Are you ready? Ollie, you gonna come say hi? He's doing his own thing. So anyway, it talks about the history, it talks about what systemic shame is. It really helps empower and kind of like take away some of that pressure and responsibility. It's so great. Then it eventually talks about how to identify these areas, kind of how some of the beliefs that we have and how we kind of do these things on like the day-to-day thing, being curious about them. And then the last part is it moves into kind of how we can challenge and change the shame patterns. So it was really great in just laying a good foundation, kind of helping being curious and identify things, and then doing something called expansive recognition, which is kind of that opposite of that systemic shame to reduce these patterns. So a lot of like exploration, a lot of reflection, as well as some tangible tools. That's pretty much the book, and it's a really quick read. I flew through it. I mean, I tend to read pretty quickly anyway, but sometimes with a self-help book, especially if I'm working a lot, a self-help book can kind of be kind of like mentally draining. Like I love them, but it also takes a mental energy that sometimes I don't always have. And this one I was super engaged with. I was super excited for. I was like highlighting things all over the place. Big tabber in a physical book. So in my e-reader, I had to like learn how to efficiently highlight things because there were so many quotes, so many tools, so many just like different ways of thinking about it. I was a big fan. Also, a little bit of background for me. If you know me from any realm, you know that I talk a lot about shame and that one of my favorite tools to use is self-compassion. There's another book that I recommend, Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff. Her website is also incredible. So shame is something that I talk a lot about on my platforms and with my clients. And so this book was a really good blend of being able to kind of like have some different language and ways of thinking about things. So, big fan of deconstructing shame. So, let's go into what else I like about this. Okay, I think I'm going to say this 100 times. You can take like a shot of water every time I say this so we can stay hydrated. It was so freaking systemic. So, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and so my brain doesn't work like other therapist brains. A lot of therapy and in our society, and there's nothing wrong with this, by the way, let me just say this, there's nothing wrong with this way of thinking, but a lot of people's brains, and even helpers' brains, are trained in kind of this called linear model. A happens, then B happens, so C happens, and we can kind of nicely organize these thoughts and these ideas that way. There's nothing wrong with that. It's literally what our medical system is built on, which, I mean, there are some faults there, but still, there's nothing wrong with that. LMFTs, however, we have what's called a systemic brain. And so we are looking at multiple things. We're not looking at just A, B, and C. We're looking at all the things that happened even before A, different timelines, different norms, different laws. It's kind of more like a giant puzzle, and we're looking at all these different pieces, and then we're able to kind of explore that with someone. So I tend to kind of be a little picky on the books that I read and recommend because not everyone is systemic. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, in order to recommend it to someone, I do want a systemic acknowledgement in some of these things. So I tend to pick apart those things and maybe give folks a little bit more of a negative view if they're not super systemic. And this book was so freaking systemic. It's so nuanced, right? Because I think a lot of times in the linear way of thinking, it simplifies things. It in our society, we kind of have to, right? Like if we're trying to write a book, it's impossible to write about all the possible factors and all the possible options. Like I get it. But this book did it so well that you can talk about the multitude of factors and the different things and still feel included in it. Like it just felt so empowering and validating to be able to see just how much stuff truly impacts us on an individual level. And especially for the goal of this book to be able to empower and deconstruct a lot of these really big, powerful things, I thought it was really good. Um, oh, he's bored of me talking now. Bye, Ollie. He might be back. Who knows? Alrighty, so what else did I like about this? This is a very similar way that I use shame in therapy. And I guess I don't really use shame, I deconstruct shame. So the concept is our beliefs and our values and our norms kind of impact us in how we view things and especially how we view ourselves and our responsibility. And so a lot of times in therapy, I'm trying to take away the individual shame of the person. And it still doesn't say, okay, that means, we're perfect and we can't take accountability for things. But shame, especially, isn't super helpful. Like, if shame worked as a productive tool, we would all be a lot happier, and we're not. Um, Taking accountability, being responsible, being able to change and acknowledge and reflect, those are all really healthy things. Shame holds us to higher standards and then makes us feel bad for not being perfect all the time. So instead of saying, oops, I did something wrong, I want to make amends or say sorry or do something to change so it doesn't happen again, very normal. I'm human. That happens. Shame says, I did something wrong. I must be bad. I'm not enough. This is always how this happens. I'm this awful person and I don't deserve good things. That's a very different response, right? One of them is also more forward moving. One of them is very paralyzing and just not helpful. So very similar to how I view shame and how I deconstruct it in the therapy space. I also really appreciated that the author explores the function of shame for some people. So you might be thinking, and if so, you're not alone because I've had a lot of clients tell me this actually, shame almost feels like something that we can control or try to fix it, right? Like if we do something wrong or like we're trying to like constantly find things to change about ourselves, it's something tangible in a way. And we're like, okay, I messed up or this bad thing happened. If I can find a way to be responsible for this, then I can control it. I can do something different and I can do it all, right? It's for like my over functioners, my people pleasers, like we are in charge of everything. That's exhausting. It also doesn't really work that way, right? Like we can only control so much, and for someone who thrives in control, and not control as in I want to control someone else and have power over them, more as control as like a survival strategy of I can't rely on other people, so I have to do everything myself. The idea of we aren't in control of everything, That can be a little terrifying. Did your heart rate go up a little bit? Because I know sometimes mine can do that when I have that realization. It can be scary. It can also be, okay, well, something bad can happen. Someone can disappoint me. And that can be a really vulnerable space. And so I appreciated that the author explored that function, and it was really gentle and compassionate about it, and then was able to help kind of guide folks to find maybe like a more sustainable way of doing it. There are things like, checklist and journal prompts, even graphs and charts. Oh, there's lots of stuff. So, like, if your brain kind of thinks like that, there's a lot of tangible things that this book can give that help you kind of move to something that's a little bit more sustainable. Each chapter also had different reflections and examples, so I really appreciated that because some of these things can be kind of complex and jargony. Like even right now, I'm noticing, a lot more therapy speak with like systemic and um, even shame, I think, can be kind of like a jargony buzzword type thing. And so at the end of each chapter, there's a lot of things to break it down into smaller bits and pieces, so it's super easy to digest. I'm not really great at doing that, and so I think it's a wonderful skill that other people have, and this book was able to really do that. So trust the book, don't necessarily trust me and how I'm describing things. The book does a way better job of describing it than I do. Super easy to follow, super easy to understand, like something tangible for like I'm a licensed therapist who's read how many textbooks and things and it was interesting to me. And I also know someone who's never read a self-help book before who was able to get stuff away from it. So like it was really engaging, super great. Okay. I kind of already hinted at this, but I had a few more thoughts on this. I really liked that it talked about some of the myths that shame is around, especially around being a motivator. Um, and it kind of like I'm a nerd around things, and so besides just saying like, well, of course it doesn't work, like they backed it up with science, but not in like a boring sciencey way. It talked about how our emotions kind of activate different responses. And so shame, people think of it as a motivator. Oh, well, if I feel bad about this, I'll do better next time. It'll motivate me to study more or work harder or insert XYZ here. But it doesn't. You might think it does, and your brain might play tricks with you, but shame actually activates our avoidance and isolation patterns. So I want to pause here. That's kind of jargony. So shame, again, I kind of used this example earlier. If shame tells us I am bad, I'm not good enough, I'm awful, and it's just kind of like these big I statements that are often really negative, and it's kind of paralyzing, right? It's also absolute. So instead of saying I did something bad, which, okay, that tells me I can do something different next time, and it's more of an action that I can change, shame says I am a bad person. Well, if I am a bad person, that seems a little harder to change, right? Like, that's just who I am. So that can be a very paralyzing, stuck feeling. Also, if we're feeling so awful about things, about, oh, I should have done this, and we just start rattling, if we're kind of spiraling, we get stuck and frozen. It also isolates us. They do a really good job of talking about how shame is really a social, I don't know, social response, maybe. So we do not want to be judged by our peers. We do not want to be viewed differently from them. And so we feel shame because we don't want to be excluded or thought differently of by the people in our community. And so when we do something maybe bad or wrong, or we make a mistake or something, we have a human moment, we isolate because we don't want other people to see that and judge us. So again, it activates our avoidance because we feel bad, we feel stuck, and we want to isolate ourselves because we don't want other people to see whatever we did. So that actually isn't a huge motivator, right? Because we know science tells us if we are isolated and avoiding and stuck, that's not super great for our mental health long term. We all have those things in the short term, and that's totally fine, but like sustainable things, that's not going to help us move forward. Then science also shows that emotions such as hope and curiosity. And even anger and sadness, those activate more of an action oriented response or like a forward moving response, right? So if I have hope, that tells me I want to do something. That's something to look forward to. It says, oh, this thing can get better. And it's moving forward. If I'm curious about something, it's not being judgmental. It's okay. I wonder why this happened. Again, so I'm starting to think about things. I'm being reflective. I might, sit with it. I might reflect on, I don't really like that. What else can I do differently? Again, we're forward moving. Even anger and sadness. I know those aren't necessarily fun emotions, but many of us, if we can identify, okay, I'm feeling angry right now or I'm feeling sad right now, we can do something with that. If I'm sad, I can go cry. I can go call my mom. I can go lay down and take a nap. If I'm angry, I can go walk around the block or do some jumping jacks or also vent to people. Like I can get it out. It's not a stuck place. So, a reminder, shame freezes us and actually does the opposite of what we want it to do. So, the book really helps explore how we can turn it into more of a curiosity or a hope that then can help us change in a more helpful way. So, so good, guys. So good. All right. And if you know anything about me, I love anything that challenges capitalist, sexist, racist norms and culture. That was so well done in this. I think the last book that they tried to do that. And there are definitely themes of it, and I definitely could see the empowerment in a lot of those things. But this book brought it to a whole new level. It was so good. Every page I was just highlighting things. And one of the things that I really appreciated about the book was kind of around the capitalist stuff is the norm in our society of this sense of urgency. And then we feel shame if we can't abide by that, right? Someone texts me, oh, I have to respond right away, or else they're going to be mad at me, or else I'm a bad friend if I don't respond to them within 24 hours. Oh, I have to respond to this email right away. Oh, someone called me. Oh, I sent someone to voicemail. Oh, someone needs me and I need to go drop this thing right now. Oh, my boss needs me to fill out this project. Everything is urgent. And that's exhausting. And then we feel bad if we can't do all the things all the time right away. It's impossible. So, one of the things that I really appreciated about this book too was how instead of this urgency thing, there's this emphasis on rest and even joy or doing less. And I know that sounds very privileged, so I do want to acknowledge that. However, I'm also going to challenge there's ways that everyone can do some of those things. So, 1000% correct. Not everyone can just take a week off of work and go on vacation and rest on a beach and not think about work. That's a huge privilege. Can we slow things down, even for 30 seconds? Tell ourselves, I'm worthy, even if I don't respond to all my emails today. That's still powerful. That's still resisting urgency. That's still allowing your body and your nervous system to rest a little bit. It doesn't have to be these lavish, grand things. So even if the book doesn't give concrete examples of how that looks on a smaller scale, I think the message of joy and less and rest can really resonate with a lot of people. One of my other favorite things that I mentioned earlier even was self-compassion. So the book also talks about self-compassion. You really can't talk about shame and not talk about self-compassion. And so again, even if we don't have the privilege of taking long days off or hiring a bunch of things to be able to do less, there are still things that we can do that take hopefully not a lot of spoons, not a lot of time, not a lot of energy, not a lot of money, that still can empower you and reduce some of that shame. Okay, one of the other things that this book does really well, and I think it's very timely, is it talks about how when we think about larger issues, maybe it's politics or the environment, consumerism, anything like that, if we care about those topics, it can be really overwhelming. We want to fix all of the things, right? Oh, there's an issue over here. I want to do all these things. I want this issue to go away. I have so much passion and care for these people, and I want the world to be a better place. And it's powerful to be an advocate. We want to be able to use our voice in order to be able to make change for others in our environment. I love that. But sometimes we can't do all the things. Sometimes we can't change a lot of things. And I don't say that to be a Debbie Downer. It's just sometimes we are limited in our time, energy, resources, power, whatever that looks like. And we can't do all the things that maybe we think we should be doing. Like, oh, maybe I can't call my senators 5 times a day. Maybe I can't write letter campaigns. Maybe I can't donate. Maybe I can't go to marches. Maybe I can't read every news article out there, like, and then we feel bad if we're not being informed on all the things. And so I loved how this book approaches that there's different roles that we can take when it comes to these larger issues. And instead of putting the pressure that we have to do all the things and that isn't enough, it really empowers you to find, well, what are your strengths? What role can you do? What areas do you have control over? And whatever that is, that's enough because it's also embedded with what other people are doing. So shame makes us feel like it's our individual responsibility to do all the things. And if we're not, we are bad and we are not doing enough. This expansive kind of way of changing it is, okay, I'm doing what I can and I'm part of a larger community that is also doing things, so I don't have to do it all. Because if I try to do it all, I'm going to crash and burn. I'm not going to be able to make it. So it's about finding your place in the fight. And they even do a good job of like using some other like characters and other like theories that kind of help people identify with, well, what can they do? And then helps people be able to like build on that foundation versus us just trying to do all the things and then like not doing them super well and then feeling defeated and exhausted. So it was great. I think that's very timely. The other thing that was kind of timely was, and this might get some pushback, it's okay, not shaming others. I know. I love being a little judgy. I'm not gonna lie. I never judge clients, but like I talked about how even in COVID, right? How I can totally relate to if someone wasn't wearing a mask, I thought some negative things sometimes. If someone doesn't use recyclable bags, sometimes I'm like, I would be nice to bring a reusable bag right here. Do we not care about our environment? So I can totally own that I sometimes get a little on my high horse. And they use their own experiences of being trans in a conservative family and how instead of blaming the individual people, they realized that there was a larger context. Now, I want to be very clear, this doesn't give people excuses to be hurtful or harmful. It doesn't excuse their behavior, but it helps understand the context they are in. So again, instead of saying, I am bad, it's I did something bad. Instead of saying, this person is bad, they did something hurtful, harmful, something like that. And then that just kind of like helps create the context there. So we can still hold people accountable, but we can also look at the context that they're in. And I thought it was just very timely for like the work that they did on finding common ground with their conservative family members. I think it's just so timely because right now everything is so divisive and we shame pretty much everything about the other party. And so I thought, as challenging as it was to read and like push myself to be like, okay, I can practice what I preach, um, it was helpful. And I think it's what a lot of people could benefit from because I think even like the politics is very isolating right now. So I thought that was really good. Um, ooh, okay. This one, I loved this quote because I think again, like they did a lot of systemic growth over since our last book. And there's this quote in here that says, increased visibility without increased social protection and support is nothing but a liability. So I love that they are encouraging people to find safe community, and that this speaking of this shame and doing these shame reducers really gives the power and the connection back to people. But we can't just tell people, hey, go speak up if they don't have the support to actually do those things, because we know that people in power are just going to continue to do things that then put that person in harm or that community in harm. So they the book does a really good job of outlining different ways of finding that safe community and those resources so that you have that increased visibility, but you also have more social protection. Otherwise, you're going to get retaliated. It could be potentially more harmful or dangerous in those situations. So I appreciated that acknowledgement in here, just because a lot of these things do have a lot of privilege. And so putting yourself out there, we don't want the liability. We want you to feel safe and empowered to do these things. Okay, a lot. Ooh, I also thought this was fascinating and then sad. So a lot of places do things for symbolic or surface levels of support without actually creating that safety and support for people, right? So it's like, okay, it's great that this organization can do this, but then it can actually put the oppressed groups of people at risk and adds more shame and pressure on that culture to kind of like be the symbol or like the representative in those in like that organizations. Like a lot of jobs do this where they're like, "Oh, we're going to be super inclusive and we're going to do X, Y, or Z," but then it ends up either being more like unpaid labor for some of these groups. It ends up not being a safe space for these groups, and they have to like do a lot of things that maybe like they didn't consent to, or it can put like a target on some of these groups. And so it sounds nice, and I hope some places have good intentions with it, but without that extra protection or support, it's just a liability and actually does more harm than good. So it was just like a really good way of challenging us. And I would love to see another book about like this in workplaces, because I think that's also very timely right now. Okay. I think I talked about all my other thoughts just because I was rambling and it's so good. Now there's a few things that I didn't like because even though I love the book and I do recommend it, um, I still want to be honest with sharing some objectives or my thoughts, and then just you can decide if it's for you. So this isn't a super fault of the author or really the purpose of the book, but just something that I thought would have been nice is because shame, the author does a really good job describing what shame is, but in the work that I do and with a lot of clients that I work with, there can be a lot of overlap between guilt, shame, and accountability and responsibility. And so while shame isn't helpful, I think it would have been helpful to explore how it's different than guilt, responsibility, and accountability. Because a lot of clients, it kind of like goes back to that initial thought up there of if I do something wrong, because I'm human. I'm gonna make mistakes. I'm gonna not always be the best version of myself. And so I'm gonna be human. Sometimes I'm gonna feel bad about how I treated someone. I can feel guilty about that. I can feel bad about that. I can take accountability and I can have responsibility for that. And I want those things to be able to help me deepen my connection with people, to be vulnerable, to do reflection, to move through change. I love all that. But I think a lot of people have it in their brain that that's what shame is. And so I really would have liked to kind of dissect some of the language. And again, if you've watched any of my videos, you know I'm a big language person. So it's not like a huge fault, but I think I would have appreciated maybe in like the intro, just some of the nuances between some of those words. Because like I'm a therapist and even sometimes I have a hard time like teasing out some of those differences. Okay, and this one also I don't think necessarily is a huge fault of the book. It's just kind of like I would have liked more of. So I guess that's a good critique is that I just wanted more. But I would have liked more exploration on how how to share with people like when you are hurt by something that they do. So like they this kind of relates to the we don't shame other people for their stuff. And again, I really would have liked a little bit more on okay, well, if my racist uncle says something offensive, yes, I can look at, okay, they grew up in different cultural norms. Maybe, their intentions are different. Like, I can look at all their privilege and context and I can be like, okay, I can see why they said that. However, I still want to hold them accountable, and that doesn't erase the offensive thing that they did. Like, how do I balance having boundaries and sharing my thoughts and feelings with people without blaming or shaming them? Like, I know as a therapist, but I think someone reading this book would have been like, oh, okay, I just like forgive my offensive family for all the awful things that they do. No, like we can still have boundaries. So I would have appreciated, maybe that's another book to come. So again, I would love it. I think that's really what a lot of people struggle with is okay, like I know I want to say something. I know, like I love, we hear this all the time. I love this family member, but they did this awful thing. Like, how do I deal with this? And so I would have liked a little bit more stuff there. Um, oh, and I have a long bullet point on this next point, and I don't even remember writing this. So this is what happens when life doesn't let you record right when you finish the book. Okay. Um, ooh, okay. I remember now. The one of the things that I think it's because I was intentionally like critiquing this book, right? Like I wanted to pick up on everything to be able to share with you guys so you guys could decide what would be helpful or unhelpful. So I was probably over analyzing some of these things. However, I think this book can be a little confusing on the individual responsibility piece because I think the main point of the book is to take away that it's the individual's responsibility for these really large things. Like a lot of our society says, well, if you're burnt out, it is your responsibility to fix that, not, oh, well, my job is forcing me to work 80 hours a week and not giving me time for these things and not compensating me and. Like there's this larger issue, right? Our society says, nope, it's your individual responsibility. And I think the main point of this book is saying, hey, actually, it's a bit larger than that. And then at the end of the book, when like they were trying to give you like the concrete things, it kind of put like used the language of, oh, if you're burnt out, and oh, the example was this mom and daughter were like having some issues. And so the mom was like, oh, I'm just gonna like step back from work a little bit and spend more time at home. So it almost felt like it was her individual responsibility. And I think that was just a bad example because I think 98% of the book was really about like lessening that individual responsibility. And then like the key final example, I was like, this literally goes against everything that you say in the book. So it again, I was searching for things because I wanted to deliver this to you guys. Um, but yeah, so it could be a little confusing. Maybe it could have been a little bit more clear, a little contradictory, but that's okay. Still love the book. Okay. The other thing is, and again, I'm doing this because I'm searching for this book. I'm holding like a little, magnifying glass to these things. I don't love generalizations in a book. And I loved that how most of the book was super nuanced and added qualifiers, and I thought it was just super well done. There was one that I found, and it said that people are never the enemy, injustice is. And while I agree with the statement, because again, the point of this book is that there's these larger issues about, and taking away that individual responsibility. However, this is kind of getting to the point where I was like, I still want to hold people accountable for the hurt that they do create. Like if someone is truly betrayed or hurt by someone, I think we can still hold those emotions and hold the space for the context that they are in. So it almost minimizes individuals' roles. And I don't think that's the point of this book. That's why I'm like, I think there's just maybe needed to be like dissected a little bit more because some people are just like do be bad things and I want to hold them accountable for those things. Like, yes, injustice is also causing it, but like there is a way to hold individual people accountable, you know? I don't know. Um, Ooh, okay. This is my last thought. And again, I totally wrote these like a month ago when I read this book. And again, this is not the fault of an author and probably not the purpose of this book, but just things that I would like to see more of and maybe future book ideas because I would read more about this is what barriers can come up when we are unlearning shame. Because a lot of these things sound great, right? Like, okay, I won't take responsibility for this. Okay, I'm gonna have this self-compassion and this nice inner talk or inner voice that's talking to me. Like all of those things sound great. They're also so much easier said than done. And a lot of these things are like so deeply ingrained in us, and even good change is stressful. And so I would have liked maybe what barriers can come up, or even like coping tools to use when those tough emotions arise. Like, oh, I said no to this thing and now I feel guilty. Like, what do I do with this? And just kind of help people. I think that would have been a really good thing to do at the end of the book to really help people feel prepared to do some of those things. Um, but again, not like an overall fault of the book, just like I wanted more. I wanted more of all of these things, and I hope we get more. Okay, so who would I recommend this book for? If you've listened this far, honestly, you could probably read it because you seem interested enough in this topic. If you're hearing me babble for as long about it, just read the book. But in an ideal world, I would recommend this to everyone. Realistically, I would recommend this to people who are already on their mental health journey and have some understanding of like coping tools or are ready to do some of the deep work. Because as much as I would love everyone to be able to like unlearn shame and make these big changes, it takes mental energy, it takes mental effort, it can bring up emotions. Like, I love the healing journey and the mental health journey, but I'm also like fully aware that it's work. And so if you don't have that foundation, then maybe it could be something that like you start some therapy and then you can do it, or you can do it in addition to like doing it while you're in therapy and kind of like talking about some of these things with a therapist. But I think it's ready for folks who like, we're not trying to convince you that this is something that needs to change. Like you're already aware that there's something that isn't sustainable about this pattern, and like you're kind of wanting to work on some of those things. This book does have a left-leaning perspective. So the author is very socially progressive, talks a lot about their experiences in a conservative family. So while I do think that the concepts apply to everyone and that everyone can benefit from it, if you are on the right, some of those examples might evoke maybe like some defensiveness, or you have a different perspective than you because it's just like it's told from a different perspective. And so you might not get maybe like as much validation or see yourself in some of these examples. So I think the concepts would still apply, but just being aware that your own like other stuff might come up while reading that, and that could then take away from the main purpose. Honestly, I think this is like a must read for a therapist, if you are a helper, if you are a mom, if you are a woman, people healing, just like I said, ideally everyone would read it. I've recommended it to so many of my clients already. But if you are in your healing journey and you want to dive deeper a little bit, I think this book could be a great tool for you. Um, And that's it. I think it was great. I was so pleasantly surprised. I'm glad that my book club kind of forced me to read another one. Maybe I'll learn something about not giving up on authors right away, but I still got room to grow as well. So if you have any ideas for the next book, let me know. I've got my next one coming up, but I need some ideas for after that. So drop your suggestions. If you've read this book, let me know if you agree or disagree with my thoughts, and stay tuned for more. Take care of yourselves.